Hi, I'm Ellie Young, 34 years old, a kindergarten teacher living in suburban Atlanta. I've been married to my husband Mark for 8 years now, and we have one son, Max, who's 6 years old, and the light of my life. Family was everything to me, or so I thought. But sometimes, family can hurt the ones they claim to love most. That afternoon, my sister Ashley dragged my son by his hair across our backyard during a family barbecue, all because Max accidentally stepped on her expensive dress. Ashley screamed like she was being murdered. My parents intervened, but shockingly, they took her side. They didn't see the damage she caused. They chose her over my son and me. What I did next made them regret it forever. I always believed family meant unconditional love and support. Growing up in our suburban Atlanta home with my younger sister Ashley, I held on to that belief with every fiber of my being. Our parents, Linda and Robert, provided us with a comfortable middle-class life. Dad worked as an insurance executive, while Mom managed a small boutique downtown. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, vacation photos framed on the mantel. But beneath that picture-perfect facade lay a troubling reality I spent years trying to ignore. Ashley came along when I was 5 years old. I remember the day my parents brought her home from the hospital, a tiny bundle with wisps of blonde hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything. "You're a big sister now, Ellie," my mother said, placing her gently in my arms. "You have to help protect her." I took that responsibility seriously. Too seriously, perhaps. As we grew up, the dynamic shifted in ways I didn't understand until much later. Ashley was beautiful, tall and willowy with our mother's blonde hair and our father's striking blue eyes. She attracted attention effortlessly, while I remained in the background with my ordinary brown hair and average height. But it wasn't her natural beauty that created the rift between us. It was how our parents responded to it. "Ashley's special," my mother would say whenever my sister threw a tantrum about not getting her way. "She feels things more deeply than other people." By high school, the pattern was firmly established. Ashley joined the cheerleading squad and became homecoming queen. I joined the debate team and the Future Teachers Club. When Ashley needed a car for her 16th birthday, she got a brand new Volkswagen Beetle in sunshine yellow. When my 16th birthday rolled around the following year, I received driving lessons and permission to use Mom's old Honda on weekends. "We already spent so much on a car last year," my father explained with a dismissive wave. "Besides, you're more practical than your sister. You understand." And I did understand, or at least I convinced myself I did. Ashley needed more. She was fragile, high-strung, special. I left for college determined to create my own path. Teaching had always been my passion, and I threw myself into my education courses at the University of Georgia. During my sophomore year, I met Mark in a literature elective we both took to fulfill general education requirements. He was studying business administration, but had a secret love of poetry that made me fall for him almost immediately. Mark came from a small family, just him and his parents, and they showed love in ways mine never had. His mother called just to check in, not to criticize. His father asked about my career plans with genuine interest. When Mark proposed after graduation, his parents welcomed me with open arms and tearful hugs. "You're the daughter we never had," his mother told me at our engagement dinner. I wished I could say my family showed the same enthusiasm. My parents attended our wedding, of course, but my mother spent most of the reception fretting about Ashley, who was going through a breakup and barely holding it together, despite somehow managing to flirt with 3 of Mark's cousins before the night was over. Mark and I settled into a small starter home near the elementary school, where I secured my first teaching position. We saved carefully, built our careers steadily, and planned for our future. When I became pregnant with Max, it felt like everything was finally coming together. The day Max was born changed everything for me. Holding his tiny body against mine, watching his unfocused eyes trying to find my face, I made a silent promise. "You will always know you are loved exactly as you are." For the first few years, We maintained a cordial relationship with my parents and Ashley. Sunday dinners at their house became a monthly tradition. Ashley had leveraged her psychology degree and natural charm into a budding career as a social media influencer, specializing in relationship advice and lifestyle content. The irony wasn't lost on me. My sister, whose longest relationship had lasted barely 6 months, dispensing wisdom to thousands of followers about how to maintain healthy partnerships. "It's all about the aesthetic," she explained when I asked how she qualified to give such advice. "People don't follow me for my credentials. They follow me because they want my life." And on Instagram, her life looked enviable indeed. Sponsored trips to coastal resorts, designer clothes laid out on king-sized hotel beds, champagne brunches with other influencers whose names she dropped casually in conversation. My parents ate it up, proudly showing her latest post to anyone who would look. "Our Ashley has almost 50,000 followers now," my mother would announce at family gatherings, as if this were equivalent to a Nobel Prize. Meanwhile, my achievements, a master's degree in early childhood education, a promotion to lead kindergarten teacher, the after-school program I was quietly building, warranted barely a nod of acknowledgement. "That's nice, dear," my mother would say distractedly before turning back to Ashley's latest drama. I told myself it didn't matter. I had Mark, who celebrated every small victory with me. I had Max, whose face lit up when I walked into a room. I had my students, whose progress I watched with pride. That should have been enough. But the slights accumulated like tiny paper cuts, individually insignificant, collectively devastating. There was the Christmas when Ashley received a $500 gift card to Nordstrom, while I got a scented candle from the same store. "We know you don't care much about fashion," my mother explained with a dismissive wave. There was my 30th birthday dinner, which turned into an impromptu celebration of Ashley's new sponsorship deal with a skincare brand. My parents ordered champagne for the table, not to toast my milestone birthday, but to celebrate Ashley's contract. "You don't mind, do you, Ellie?" my father asked, already pouring the bubbling liquid into flutes. "This is such a big break for your sister." And there was the time my mother called me in tears because Ashley was having a crisis and needed $3,000 for rent. I later discovered the money went toward a weekend in Miami with her influencer friends, documented in exquisite detail on her Instagram feed. She needed to make those connections for her brand. My mother defended when I confronted her. "It's an investment in her future." The real trouble began when Max started to form his own opinions about his aunt and grandparents. Children have an uncanny ability to sense authenticity or its absence. By the time he was 4, Max had grown wary of Ashley's performative affection. The way she would scoop him up for a photo and then immediately hand him back to me once she had her content. "Auntie Ashley smells funny," he told me once after she had hugged him for a particularly staged family photo. "And she squeezes too hard when the camera looks." My parents, too, showed their true colors around Max. They bought him extravagant gifts, toys too advanced for his age, clothes that were fashionable but impractical, then showed little interest in actually playing with him or listening to his stories. Their love came with conditions. Be photogenic. Be quiet when adults are talking. Perform on command with please and thank you. Mark noticed it before I allowed myself to acknowledge the pattern. "They treat him like a prop," he observed after one Sunday dinner where my mother had repeatedly shushed Max's attempts to tell a story about his day at school. "Just like they treat you." "They don't mean to," I defended automatically. "They just have different expectations." Mark gave me a look I'd come to recognize, part sympathy, part frustration at my willful blindness. "Ellie, at some point, you have to stop making excuses for them." The incident that finally opened my eyes happened on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday evening. I had called my parents to share news about a grant I'd received to expand my after-school program. Ellie's Little Learners. The funding would allow me to hire 2 assistants and accept twice as many children. "That's wonderful, honey," my mother said, her voice distracted. "Listen, can I call you back? Ashley's having a crisis." "What's wrong?" I asked, genuinely concerned. "She's lost a sponsorship deal with that athletic wear company. You know, The one with the commercials. Apparently, they're going with someone who has more followers. She's devastated. I'm sorry to hear that, I said automatically. But Mom, this grant is really important to me. I've been working toward this for 2 years. Ellie, my mother's voice turned sharp. Your sister is in tears. She's talking about moving back home because she can't make rent. This is serious. My news is serious too, I insisted, a rare moment of standing my ground. It's just an after-school program, she dismissed. Ashley's whole career is at stake. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The grant approval letter in front of me. Just an after-school program. As if the countless hours I'd poured into curriculum development, the relationships I'd built with families, the difference I was making in children's lives, as if none of that mattered compared to Ashley's Instagram follower count. Mark found me there an hour later, still staring at the letter. Bad news? He asked, setting his briefcase down. No, actually, great news. I got the grant. Ellie, that's amazing. He pulled me into a hug. I knew you would. You've worked so hard for this. I felt tears prickling behind my eyes at his genuine enthusiasm. Thank you. Did you tell your parents? I tried. The story spilled out of me then, not just about the phone call, but about all of it. The years of dismissal, of playing second fiddle, of watching the same pattern begin with our son. I think, I said slowly, realization dawning as I spoke, I think they've never really seen me. Not for who I am. Mark squeezed my hand. Then maybe it's time to stop seeking their approval. He was right, of course, but old habits die hard, and the little girl in me still desperately wanted her parents' love and recognition. So I continued our monthly dinners, continued to bring Max to family gatherings, continued to hope that someday they would see the hurt they caused. Instead, things got worse. Ashley's behavior toward Max grew increasingly hostile as he developed his own personality, one that didn't accommodate her need to be the center of attention. When he refused to perform on command for her Instagram stories, she called him defective within his hearing. When he accidentally knocked over her designer purse during a family dinner, she called him a little monster and demanded I control him better. He's 6, I reminded her. Accidents happen. Well, your lack of discipline is why he behaves like this, she shot back. If he were my child, he'd have better manners. My parents, predictably, sided with Ashley. You do let him get away with too much, my mother observed. Ashley's just trying to help. I began to limit our visits, making excuses about Max's school schedule or Mark's work commitments. But my mother grew increasingly insistent about the annual 4th of July barbecue at their house. Everyone will be there, she pressured. All your cousins are coming in from out of town. You can't miss it. So against my better judgment, we went. The day started pleasantly enough. My parents' backyard was decorated with American flags and red, white, and blue bunting. The smell of my father's famous barbecue ribs filled the air, and coolers of drinks sat sweating in the summer heat. Max immediately found his second cousins, twins a year older than him, and they raced off to play with water guns in the far corner of the yard. Ashley arrived fashionably late, making an entrance in a flowing white silk dress that looked wildly impractical for a backyard barbecue. It was the kind of outfit chosen specifically for photographs rather than comfort. Sure enough, she spent the first 20 minutes posing against various backdrops while her boyfriend of the month took pictures with her phone. That's going to get filthy, I murmured to Mark as we watched her arrange herself on a pristine white blanket spread over the grass. $10 says she changes into something else after she gets her content, he whispered back. But Ashley kept the dress on, sweeping dramatically around the yard, collecting compliments from relatives. Anthropology, she announced to our aunt who had admired the flowing sleeves. Limited edition, $1,200, but my followers expect a certain aesthetic. I nearly choked on my lemonade. $1,200 for a dress to wear to a barbecue? Mark and I had recently agonized over spending $200 on a new bike for Max's birthday. The afternoon progressed, and despite my anxiety, nothing catastrophic happened. Ashley largely ignored Max, which was preferable to her usual cutting remarks. My parents were busy playing host and hostess to the extended family. Mark chatted amiably with my cousins' husbands about basketball. Max and the twins had moved on from water guns to a complex game involving action figures and the treehouse my father had built decades ago for Ashley and me. It was during the lull before dessert, when people were digesting the heavy barbecue lunch and lounging in lawn chairs, that everything fell apart. Max and the twins had been sent to retrieve a ball that had rolled under the deck. As they emerged, triumphant with their prize, Max's path intersected with Ashley, who was returning from the house with a fresh cocktail. In his excitement, Max didn't see her until it was too late. He stumbled directly into her path, his small sneaker landing squarely on the hem of her white silk dress. The sound of tearing fabric seemed unnaturally loud in the momentary quiet of the yard. Ashley looked down at the now dirty, torn edge of her dress, then at Max, who had frozen in place, his face already crumpling in anticipation of trouble. "I'm sorry, Auntie Ashley," he said quickly, backing away. "It was an accident." What happened next occurred so quickly that later, when I tried to describe it to the family lawyer, I had to pause and reconstruct the sequence of events. Ashley's face contorted with rage. She lunged forward, dropping her drink, and grabbed Max by his hair, not his arm or his shoulder, but a fistful of his soft brown curls. Then she dragged him, screaming and stumbling, across several feet of yard toward where my parents stood by the grill. "Look what your grandson did," she shrieked, giving Max's hair another vicious tug. "Look at my dress. It's ruined." I was across the yard in seconds, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Let go of him," I screamed, reaching for my son. "What is wrong with you?" Max broke free and ran into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably, his small body shaking. I held him close, my hands automatically checking for injuries, finding angry red marks on his scalp where she'd pulled his hair. "Ashley, that is completely unacceptable," Mark said, his voice low and dangerous as he stepped between us and my sister. "You do not put your hands on our child, ever." I expected my parents to be horrified, to immediately condemn Ashley's behavior. Instead, my mother moved to Ashley's side, examining the tear in her dress with concerned clicks of her tongue. "Oh, sweetie, it's ruined," she sympathized. "And you said it was limited edition?" My father frowned at Max, who was still crying against my chest. "Boys need to be more careful," he said sternly. "That was an expensive dress." I stared at them in disbelief. "Are you serious right now? She just assaulted your grandson over a piece of fabric." "Don't be so dramatic, Ellie," my mother scoffed. "She barely touched him. Boys that age need to learn consequences for their actions." "Consequences?" Mark's voice rose in incredulity. "He accidentally stepped on her dress, and she yanked him across the yard by his hair. He's 6 years old." The rest of the family had gone uncomfortably silent, watching the drama unfold. My cousin Jennifer approached cautiously. "Is Max okay?" she asked, genuine concern in her voice. "No, he's not okay," I said, my voice shaking with fury. "And we're leaving." "Oh, Ellie, don't overreact," my mother pleaded, looking around at the gathered relatives. "You'll ruin the party." "I'll ruin the party?" I repeated incredulously. "Not Ashley. Who just assaulted a child in front of everyone? Not you and Dad? Who are defending her?" "She's upset," my father said, as if that explained everything. The dress was important to her brand. In that moment, something inside me broke, or perhaps it finally healed. The fog of denial I'd lived in for decades suddenly lifted, and I saw my family with painful clarity. "Her brand," I repeated flatly. "Her brand is more important than your grandson's safety and dignity. That's where we are." "Now, Ellie," my father began, using the placating tone he always employed when he thought I was being unreasonable. "No," I cut him off. "We're done here. Come on, Mark." As we gathered our things, Ashley stood tearfully examining her dress, playing the victim to perfection while my mother fussed over her. Not once did either of them look at Max or ask if he was okay. In the car, Max's sobs gradually quieted to hiccuping breaths. "Why was Auntie Ashley so mad at me?" he asked in a small voice that broke my heart. I said I was sorry. Sometimes people care too much about things and not enough about people. Mark answered when I couldn't find the words. "But that's about Auntie Ashley, not about you. You didn't do anything wrong, buddy." "Are Grandma and Grandpa mad at me too?" I met Mark's eyes over our son's head, saw the same pain and anger I felt reflected there. "Grandma and Grandpa made a mistake today," I said carefully. "They should have made sure you were okay. And they didn't. That was wrong of them." When we got home, I helped Max into a warm bath, checked his scalp again for injuries, and read him 3 bedtime stories until he drifted off to sleep. Then I went downstairs and fell apart in Mark's arms. "I can't believe they took her side," I sobbed. "Their own grandson." "I know," Mark said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I saw a side of your parents today I can't unsee. Ellie." My phone had been buzzing consistently since we left. Text messages from my mother. "You're embarrassing the family by leaving like that. Ashley's dress cost more than your monthly salary. Max needs to learn to watch where he's going. Call me when you've calmed down and are ready to apologize." Apologize? The audacity of it sent a fresh wave of anger through me. I showed the messages to Mark, who read them with a deepening frown. "Ellie, I've tried to be supportive of your relationship with your parents despite how they treat you, but this crosses a line. They're defending someone who physically hurt our child." "I know," I whispered. I think I'm done." "What does that mean for you?" I took a deep breath. "It means no more Sunday dinners, no more holidays, no more pretending they care about me or Max when they've shown again and again that they don't." Mark nodded slowly. "I'm with you, whatever you decide, but are you sure you're ready for the fallout? Your parents don't seem like the type to respect boundaries easily." He was right about that. The next morning, my mother called 7 times before I finally answered, bracing myself for the conversation. "Ellie, this silent treatment is childish," she began without preamble. "Your father and I expect you at dinner this Sunday to smooth things over with Ashley." "That's not happening, Mom." "Don't be ridiculous. Family disagreements happen. You need to get over it." "Ashley dragged my son by his hair across your yard," I said, struggling to keep my voice even. "She hurt him. You and Dad defended her. That's not a disagreement. That's abuse. And I won't subject Max to it again." "You always were prone to exaggeration." My mother sighed dramatically. "Ashley was upset. The dress was expensive." "I don't care if the dress cost $1 million. Nothing justifies hurting a child." "So you're choosing to tear this family apart over one little incident?" Her voice rose accusingly. "After everything we've done for you?" The question caught me off guard. "What exactly have you done for me, Mom? When was the last time you supported something important to me? When was the last time you chose me over Ashley?" The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "I need to go now. Please don't call again unless you're ready to apologize to Max." "Apologize to—" "Ellie, you're being absurd." I ended the call and blocked her number, then did the same with my father's and Ashley's. The relief I felt was immediate and overwhelming, like setting down a heavy burden I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. That evening, after Max was in bed, I sat down at our kitchen table with my laptop and opened the files for Ellie's Little Learners. What had started as a modest after-school program with 5 children in our living room had grown to serve 25 students in a rented classroom space at a local community center. The grant would allow me to expand further, perhaps even lease a small building of my own. My parents had dismissed it as just an after-school program, but the truth was, I'd built something valuable. Parents trusted me with their children. Local elementary schools referred struggling students to my program. I had a waiting list and glowing testimonials from families whose children had thrived under my care. And I'd done it all without my family's support or acknowledgement. As I scrolled through the business plan I'd submitted with my grant application, I realized something. I'd been playing small, afraid to outshine Ashley, afraid to challenge my parents' narrative about who I was and what I could achieve. That ended now. Over the next few months, I threw myself into expanding Ellie's Little Learners. I hired 2 part-time teachers, both former colleagues with excellent credentials. I found a perfect location, a small standalone building near the elementary school with a fenced yard for outdoor activities. I developed a comprehensive curriculum that balanced academic support with creative enrichment. By September, we had 50 children enrolled and a steady stream of income that surpassed my teaching salary. I made the difficult decision to resign from my position at the school to focus on the business full-time. I'm proud of you. Mark told me the night I submitted my resignation letter. You're finally betting on yourself. Meanwhile, my parents had escalated their campaign to bring me back into the fold. When they realized I'd blocked their numbers, they began sending messages through other family members. They showed up at our house unannounced, forcing me to turn them away at the door while Max watched wide-eyed from the staircase. They sent a lavish gift basket to Mark's office, presumably hoping he would advocate on their behalf. They don't get it, do they? Mark observed after describing the awkwardness of receiving flowers and gourmet chocolates at his workplace. They think this is a negotiation. It's always been their way or nothing. I agreed. They can't imagine a world where I simply refuse to play their game anymore. The hardest part was explaining the situation to Max. How do you tell a 6-year-old that his grandparents and aunt are toxic people who prioritize appearances over his well-being? In the end, we kept it simple. Grandma, Grandpa, and Auntie Ashley made some bad choices, I explained gently. They hurt your feelings and didn't say sorry, so we're taking a break from seeing them until they learn to be kinder. Like a timeout? He asked, making the connection to a concept he understood. Kind of like that, yes. He seemed satisfied with this explanation, though occasionally he would ask innocent questions that pierced my heart. Does Grandpa still make those cookies I like? Or will Grandma come to my school play? As fall turned to winter, my parents' attempts at contact became less frequent but more desperate. Through the family grapevine, I heard that Ashley's influencer career was faltering. She'd lost several sponsorships and was struggling to maintain her lifestyle. My mother hinted through my cousin that they'd been helping Ashley financially and couldn't continue supporting her indefinitely. Translation: the bank of Mom and Dad was running dry, and they needed me, steady, reliable Ellie, back in the picture. I might have weakened, might have answered one of their calls or responded to one of their messages, if not for Mrs. Reynolds. She was our parents' next-door neighbor, a kind widow who had always slipped Max cookies when we visited. She called me out of the blue one October evening. Ellie, dear, I hope you don't mind me calling. Your mother gave me your number years ago for the neighborhood directory. Of course not. Mrs. Reynolds, is everything okay? There was a pause on the line. Well, that's why I'm calling. I've been concerned since the 4th of July. I saw what happened with your sister and your little boy. My heart sank. You were there? I was in my yard gardening. I saw everything. How she grabbed him by the hair. How your parents reacted. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. It was difficult, I admitted. It was assault, Mrs. Reynolds said firmly. I nearly called the police. The only reason I didn't was because I saw you and your husband intervene so quickly. Hearing someone else name what had happened, assault, sent a shiver through me. It wasn't an overreaction. It wasn't me being too sensitive. It was abuse, witnessed by others, recognized as wrong by normal, healthy people. I wanted you to know, Mrs. Reynolds continued, that I support your decision to keep your distance. I've known your parents for 20 years, watched you and your sister grow up, the way they've always favored Ashley. It wasn't right. And now, to defend her after what she did to that sweet little boy of yours? No. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. Tears filled my eyes. Thank you for saying that. Mrs. Reynolds, it means a lot to hear it from someone who's known us so long. Stand your ground, dear. Some people never change unless they're forced to face consequences. After we hung up, I sat quietly processing our conversation. Mrs. Reynolds had seen the truth all these years. The favoritism, the dysfunction. and had just confirmed what I'd finally allowed myself to acknowledge. This wasn't my fault. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't the one tearing the family apart. That night, I made a decision. It wasn't enough to simply cut contact. My parents and Ashley needed to understand the depth of what they'd done, the consequences of their choices, and I needed closure. Real closure. Not just a fading away of relationship. I began collecting evidence. Screenshots of my mother's dismissive text messages, the business records showing how Ellie's little learners had succeeded without their support, testimonials from parents about the difference my program had made for their children, a statement from Mrs. Reynolds about what she'd witnessed on July 4th. Mark watched my preparations with a mixture of concern and admiration. "What exactly are you planning?" he asked one evening as I organized documents in a folder on my laptop. "A reckoning," I answered simply. "At Thanksgiving." "You want to confront them at Thanksgiving dinner?" He looked skeptical. "Ellie, is that really the best setting?" "It's perfect. Actually, the whole extended family will be there. My parents have spent years crafting a narrative about who I am, who Ashley is, what our family stands for. It's time everyone heard the truth." Mark considered this, then nodded slowly. "Okay, if this is what you need, I'm with you, but let's be strategic." Together, we developed a plan, not just for the confrontation itself, but for what would come after. We consulted with a family lawyer about establishing clear legal boundaries if my parents or Ashley tried to retaliate. We began looking at houses in a different school district, somewhere Max could have a fresh start away from the shadow of family drama. We discussed how to protect Ellie's little learners from any potential fallout. As Thanksgiving approached, my resolve strengthened. I wasn't doing this out of spite or revenge, though there was certainly an element of justice in it. I was doing it because the truth needed to be spoken aloud after decades of silence. I was doing it for Max, so he would grow up knowing that no one had the right to hurt him, no matter who they were, and I was doing it for myself, the little girl who had spent her life believing she was less than, the woman who had finally found her voice. The day before Thanksgiving, my cousin Jennifer called. "Are you coming tomorrow? Your mom told everyone you might not make it." "We'll be there," I assured her. "All three of us." "Oh, good," she sounded relieved. "It wouldn't be the same without you guys. And just so you know, I'm on your side about what happened this summer. Ashley was way out of line." "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot." "More people agree with you than you probably realize," she added quietly. "We've all seen how they favor Ashley over the years. What happened with Max just made it impossible to ignore anymore." Her words gave me courage. Perhaps I wasn't as alone in this as I'd thought. Thanksgiving dinner was being held at the Willowbrook Estate, a historic venue my parents had rented for the occasion. It was exactly the kind of showy, expensive choice they favored, designed to impress rather than create genuine warmth or connection. The invitation had specified formal attire, another unnecessary complication for a family holiday. I chose my outfit carefully, a modest but elegant navy blue dress I'd purchased from a local boutique called the Blue Oak. It had cost more than I'd typically spend, but I wanted to look my best, to present myself as the confident, successful woman I'd become rather than the perpetually overshadowed daughter they still saw me as. Mark wore a charcoal gray suit that complemented my dress, and we dressed Max in a pair of nice khakis and a sweater vest he found itchy, but agreed to wear when I promised he could change as soon as we got home. "Remember the plan," I told Mark as we pulled into the parking lot of the Willowbrook Estate. "No matter what happens, we stay calm and focused. And if your sister or parents get hostile, we leave immediately. Max's safety comes first." The grand hall of the Willowbrook Estate had been decorated lavishly for the occasion. A long table dominated the center of the room, set with fine china and crystal glasses. Arrangements of autumn flowers and gourds created an appropriately seasonal atmosphere. My extended family milled about in their finery, sipping pre-dinner cocktails and catching up on each other's lives. My mother spotted us first. She hurried over, her face a careful mask of delight that didn't reach her eyes. "Ellie, Mark, we weren't sure you'd come." "We said we would," I replied evenly. "Hello, Max?" she said, bending slightly toward my son. Haven't you grown?" Max pressed closer to my side, regarding his grandmother warily. "Hello," he mumbled, clearly uncomfortable. "Why don't you go find your cousins?" my mother suggested. "I think they're in the side room playing games." "He'll stay with us for now," Mark said firmly. My mother's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Well, come say hello to everyone. Your father will be so pleased you made it." We followed her into the room, accepting greetings from relatives along the way. My father was deep in conversation with my uncle by the fireplace, but broke away when he saw us approach. "There she is," he said, enfolding me in a brief, stiff hug. "Glad you could join us, Princess." The childhood nickname, once cherished, now felt like a deliberate infantilization. I was a 34-year-old business owner, not a little girl seeking Daddy's approval. "Where's Ashley?" I asked, glancing around the room. "Running late, as usual." My father chuckled indulgently. "You know your sister. She likes to make an entrance." As if on cue, the doors opened, and Ashley swept in wearing a striking red dress that looked like it had been painted onto her slender frame. Her boyfriend, a different one than at the 4th of July barbecue, trailed behind her, looking uncomfortable in his suit. I'm here, she announced to the room at large. Traffic was a nightmare." She worked her way through the crowd, accepting compliments and distributing air kisses. When she reached our little group, she gave me a brittle smile. "Ellie, you came. Mom wasn't sure you would, what with your little tantrum this summer." "We're here," I said simply. Her eyes dropped to Max, who was partially hidden behind me. "Hello, Max," she said in the saccharine voice adults often use with children they don't particularly like. "Have you learned to watch where you're going?" Before I could respond, my mother stepped in smoothly. "Let's not rehash old disagreements. It's Thanksgiving. We should be grateful to be together as a family." "Dinner is served," announced a staff member from the venue, saving us from further awkward conversation. As we took our seats at the long table, I noted the seating arrangement with grim amusement. My parents had placed Ashley in the position of honor to my father's right, while Mark, Max, and I were seated near the far end of the table, as if our presence were an afterthought. The meal progressed with the usual Thanksgiving rituals. My father carved the turkey with ceremonial flair. Wine flowed freely. Conversations ebbed and flowed around politics, sports, and family gossip. I ate little, too focused on what was to come to have much appetite. When dessert was being served, pumpkin pie with fresh whipped cream, my father stood to make his annual Thanksgiving toast. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. "Before you start, Dad," I said, rising from my seat, "I'd like to say something." The table fell quiet. My father looked momentarily thrown off balance. Interruptions to his carefully choreographed family performances were rare, but he recovered quickly. "Of course, Ellie, the floor is yours." I took a deep breath and looked around the table, making eye contact with each family member in turn. Mark squeezed my hand under the table in silent support. "I've been thinking a lot about family lately," I began. "What it means, what it should be, what we owe each other. I've always believed that family meant unconditional love and support, safety, acceptance." I paused. "But I've realized that's not what this family has been for me, or for my son." My mother's face tightened. "Ellie, this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," I continued steadily. "We're all here, together, supposedly celebrating our gratitude for each other, but I'm not grateful for how this family has treated me, and I'm certainly not grateful for how you've treated Max." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My cousin Jennifer caught my eye and gave me a small, encouraging nod. "For as long as I can remember," I went on, "there's been a clear hierarchy in this family. Ashley first, me second, Ashley's needs, Ashley's wants, Ashley's feelings, always prioritized over mine. I accepted that. I told myself it was because she needed more, because she was special." I looked directly at my sister. "But the truth is, There was nothing special about it. It was just favoritism, plain and simple. That's ridiculous, my mother interjected. We've always loved you both equally. Have you? I challenged. When was the last time you celebrated one of my achievements? When was the last time you put my needs above Ashley's? When was the last time you chose me? Neither of my parents had an answer. I could give dozens of examples, I continued. The Christmas gifts, the birthdays, the constant excuses for Ashley's behavior while holding me to a different standard, but none of that really matters anymore. What matters is what happened on July 4th of this year. Ashley shifted uncomfortably in her seat. My father cleared his throat. Ellie, ancient history. It was 4 months ago, I corrected. And it wasn't a minor family disagreement. It was assault. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. My 6-year-old son accidentally stepped on Ashley's dress. In response, she grabbed him by the hair and dragged him across the yard. Screaming at him, he had marks on his scalp. He was terrified. And when Mark and I intervened to protect our child, you two, I looked pointedly at my parents, took her side. You defended her. You blamed a 6-year-old child for an adult woman's violent behavior. That's not how it happened, Ashley protested, her voice rising. He ruined my dress on purpose. It was $1,200. He's 6 years old, Mark said, his voice calm but carrying across the table. He didn't ruin anything on purpose, and even if he had, nothing justifies putting your hands on a child that way. Mrs. Reynolds saw the whole thing, I added. She nearly called the police. My father's face flushed red. Now you're bringing the neighbors into family business? This is outrageous. Ellie, you've always been dramatic, but this takes the cake. This isn't drama, Dad. This is the truth, and it's time everyone heard it. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I have the text messages Mom sent after the incident. Would you like me to read them aloud? The ones where she blames Max for being assaulted and demands that I apologize to Ashley? My mother's face went pale. You wouldn't. I would. I turned to the table at large. For months, I've been trying to understand how my own parents could witness their grandson being hurt and take the side of the person who hurt him. I've been trying to reconcile the family I thought I had with the reality of who you are. I focused on my parents again, and I've realized I can't. What exactly are you saying? My father demanded. I'm saying that I'm done pretending, done making excuses for your behavior, done subjecting my son to people who don't value his dignity and safety. I took a deep breath. I'm saying goodbye. Don't be ridiculous, my mother scoffed, though her voice trembled slightly. You can't just walk away from family. Watch me. Ashley stood suddenly, her chair scraping loudly across the floor. This is all your fault, she cried, tears springing to her eyes. You've always been jealous of me, and now you're trying to turn everyone against me. This isn't about jealousy, Ashley. This is about accountability. You hurt my child, and you've never once apologized or shown any remorse. He's fine, she insisted, gesturing wildly at Max, who shrank back against Mark's side. Look at him. Not a scratch on him. You're making this into something it wasn't because you can't stand that Mom and Dad love me more than they love you. The raw truth of her statement silenced the room. Even Ashley seemed shocked by what she'd said. My father recovered first. Your sister doesn't mean that, Ellie. Of course we love you both the same. No, you don't, I said quietly. And that's okay. I don't need your love anymore. I have people in my life who love me authentically, who support me, who see me for who I really am. I turned to the rest of the family. I didn't come here to create drama. I came to tell the truth and to say goodbye. Many of you have watched this dynamic play out for years and said nothing. That's your choice. But I'm making a different choice now. I stood, signaling to Mark that it was time to go. We won't be attending family gatherings anymore. We won't be maintaining contact with my parents or with Ashley. If any of you would like to have a relationship with us separate from them, you're welcome to reach out. We'd love to have you in our lives, but only if you can respect our boundaries. My Aunt Margaret, my father's sister, spoke up from her place at the table. Ellie, I've watched this family dynamic for 30 years, and I've never had the courage to say anything. But you're right. What happened to Max was wrong, and the way you've been treated has been wrong. I support your decision. Thank you, Aunt Margaret, I said, genuinely touched by her support. As we gathered our things to leave, my father made one last attempt. Ellie, don't do this. Think about what you're throwing away. I looked at him steadily. I'm not throwing away anything of value. Dad, I'm protecting what matters. My son, my self-respect, my peace of mind. You'll regret this, my mother warned, her voice cold. When you've calmed down and thought this through, you'll realize what a mistake you're making. The only mistake I made was letting this go on for so long. I took Max's hand. Say goodbye, Max. We're leaving. Goodbye, he said quietly, clearly relieved to be escaping the tension in the room. As we walked out of the Willowbrook estate, I felt a profound sense of liberation, the weight of decades of trying to earn my parents' love, of competing with Ashley for scraps of approval, of making myself small to fit their narrative, all of it lifted from my shoulders with each step toward the exit. In the car, Mark turned to me. You did it. How do you feel? Free, I answered honestly. Sad, but free. The consequences of my Thanksgiving speech rippled through the family like a stone dropped in still water. By Christmas, the extended family had divided into camps, those who supported us, those who supported my parents and Ashley, and those who wanted to remain neutral. Aunt Margaret became an unexpected ally, calling regularly to check on us and visiting with thoughtful gifts for Max. Several cousins reached out via social media to express their support privately, though they weren't ready to openly break with my parents. Mrs. Burr Reynolds invited us to her Christmas cookie exchange, introducing us to neighbors who quickly became friends. Meanwhile, Ashley's carefully curated influencer lifestyle began to crumble. One of her followers had been at the Thanksgiving dinner, a distant relative's +1, and had shared the story on social media. In the current climate of heightened awareness around child welfare, the backlash was swift and severe. Brands distanced themselves from her, unwilling to be associated with someone accused of assaulting a child. Her follower count plummeted as people unsubscribed in droves. Through the family grapevine, I heard that she'd lost sponsorship deals worth over $20,000, forcing her to take a retail job to make ends meet. Her boyfriend left her shortly after Thanksgiving, unwilling to weather the storm of negative publicity. My parents faced their own consequences. Friends and neighbors who had witnessed Ashley's behavior at the 4th of July barbecue or heard about the Thanksgiving confrontation began to treat them differently. Invitations to social events became less frequent. The perfect family image they'd worked so hard to maintain was tarnished beyond repair. I took no pleasure in their difficulties. Despite everything, they were still my parents, and a part of me would always love them. But I recognized that these consequences were necessary, not as punishment, but as the natural result of years of toxic behavior finally exposed to the light. As for us, life improved dramatically once we stopped contorting ourselves to fit into my family's dysfunction. Ellie's Little Learners continued to thrive, expanding to 2 locations by the following spring. Mark received a promotion at work, allowing us to purchase a beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood with excellent schools. Max blossomed without the shadow of his aunt's hostility and his grandparents' conditional affection, becoming more confident and outgoing. One evening in early May, nearly 6 months after the Thanksgiving confrontation, Mark and I sat on the back deck of our new home, watching Max play with the neighborhood children in our fenced yard. The spring air was sweet with the scent of blooming dogwood trees, and the sound of children's laughter drifted up to us. I got a call from my mother today, I told Mark, sipping a glass of wine. The first time she's tried to contact me directly since Thanksgiving. What did she want? He asked, his posture tensing slightly. To tell me that she and my father are divorcing. Apparently, the events of the past year have put too much strain on their marriage. I paused. She wanted to know if she could see Max. And what did you say? I watched my son as he organized an elaborate game of tag, assigning roles and explaining rules with patient authority. He looked so happy, so unburdened. I told her that would depend on several things: a genuine apology to Max, first and foremost, acknowledgement of the harm she's caused, a commitment to respecting our boundaries going forward. I shrugged. She said she'd think about it. Mark nodded slowly. Do you think she's capable of that kind of change? I don't know. Maybe losing Dad and watching her perfect family narrative collapse has been a wake-up call. Or maybe she's just lonely and looking for someone to fill the void. I sighed. Either way, I'm not rushing into anything. Max's well-being comes first. Always, Mark agreed. He took my hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. You know, watching you stand up to your family, seeing how you've protected Max and built this life for us. It's made me fall in love with you all over again. Warmth spread through my chest at his words. Even though it cost us relationships? Those relationships were already broken. Ellie, you just stopped pretending they weren't. He smiled at me, his eyes soft in the fading light. Besides, look what we've gained. He gestured toward our son, now leading a parade of neighborhood children in a complicated game involving sticks transformed by imagination into magic wands. Max's face was alight with joy and confidence, secure in the knowledge that he was loved unconditionally, that his boundaries would be respected, that the adults in his life would protect him no matter what. Worth it, I said softly. All of it, worth it. As the evening deepened into twilight, fireflies began to blink in the gathering darkness. Mark called Max in for dinner, and our son came running, full of stories about his adventures with the neighborhood kids, watching him chatter excitedly about his day. I felt a profound sense of peace. The family I'd been born into had failed me in fundamental ways, but the family I'd chosen, the family I'd built, this was everything I'd ever wanted. This was real love, real support, real connection. Sometimes family hurts the ones they claim to love most, but sometimes, when we find the courage to break free from toxic patterns and create boundaries, we discover that family can also be the source of our greatest healing. My sister dragged my son by his hair across the yard. My parents chose her, and in doing so, they lost me forever. But in that loss, I found myself, and that was the greatest victory of all. Hi, I'm Ellie Young, and this is my story of how I finally learned to put my son and myself first, even when it meant leaving behind the family I thought I needed.